This is my review of Weapons. Weapons is a brand new horror film released by Creggar, the same director as Barbarian. I think that was about 2 years ago now. And I must say the marketing for this film was pretty fantastic, with a really, really strong hook. When all but one child from the same class mysteriously vanish on the same night at the exact same time, a community is left questioning who or what is behind the disappearance. We already had a really fantastic horror film released this year in Sinners. Not to say there can be only one, but to see the actual reach that Sinners got was so fantastic for the general horror community. And I'd say this is pretty much rivaling it just because the marketing was so fantastic. And like even when I went to go see it, it was a full out Max screen. That really goes to show that like widespread mainstream horror is really at its height right now. And you have a lot of really great, I heard horror films coming out like Bring Her Back. I really do want to see that because Talk to Me was my favourite film of 2023. But I'm just afraid that I'm going to get sick everywhere. The story already had a really interesting hook to get you in the seat. But how the film actually unfolded and the cards that it held up its sleeve, I thought were fantastic. And I could see some people not exactly vibing with how this story plays out and I'd just say the kind of folk horror I kind of say it leads into. It's not all very surface level horror. They're going into different, how to say, mythologies possibly, mysteriousness, mystiqueness. Woo! Yeah, essentially it's going into a lot more than just guy with knife in a way. Creggar as a filmmaker already showed that in Barbarian he's able to show us something and then take the ball and run with it in a completely different direction, which I think is really fantastic. Even if some audience members generally, I'd say, the general audience might not like a film taking such a turn into something they might not be totally comfortable with. Like it was such a fantastic move because no one expects it, and the things that even like from what I understand, he doesn't even expect it either. The first 30 minutes of Barbarian was taken from I believe the book is called The Gift of Fear, and he liked the initial idea of it so much that he decided to build on it, and like it takes such a turn from what you're given straight away, the premise that's given, and I think that it's so original and clever that, and I'd actually say it's almost brave to take something and run with it in the opposite direction, because obviously an audience member might be like, "What the fuck? That's crazy," but the plot can be crazy, and if you have strong enough characters, good acting, I think that any audience member can really, really enjoy what's being presented to them, and I think that he absolutely smashed it in terms of that. I thought it was really fantastic and clever story. Pacing is really, really good. I think it's kind of a cheat code in a way to pace your story up, or to say split your story up into different character arcs, because that's how this film goes. It starts with the main character Justine, and then it goes into the different characters in the film and their perspective of the story. And what I think is really clever about that is obviously it freshens up the story because you get to see another perspective from over here, or what he was thinking, or where he was at this point when this thing happens. But slowly it starts to reveal not even massive plot points. It could just reveal a small plot point. You could go, oh shit, that happened back there, and then you put two and two together. And I think that's really smart because essentially if the audience is able to put two and two together in their heads without the film going, here you fucking go, it makes them feel smarter, and then if they feel smarter, they're going to enjoy the movie more. There's a specific plot point, I don't want to do any big spoilers, but there's a specific plot point with paint, and when the question is answered about the paint, it's explicitly shown like once, but when it's like minorly shown, it's really smart and really clever, and I really loved it. I just love this very simple kind of storytelling. I think it's fantastic, and that's revealed through another character's story. Now obviously some of you listen to this and just saying, yeah, obviously as you go on through the film, you more plot points are revealed that go back to the previous plot points, blah blah, but you just got to trust me on this, that there's a lot of points where you're just like, oh yeah, no, oh fuck. For a lot of the main characters, none of them are particularly angels. Obviously there's like all the characters are good people or whatever, but they might do some things that are a small bit shady, which makes them 10 times more relatable. And I didn't really expect it, because obviously for your horror heroine, you feel like half the time they got to be this perfect image of innocence. But that's really not the case in this, and I really, really enjoyed that. That was fresh, and it totally made the characters way, way more relatable. Probably the only one who was an angel was Alex, the child. Yeah, I guess he was an angel, sure. Julia Garner is really fantastic as this teacher that can't tell anyone what's going on when all they're doing is everyone's asking her what's going on. She's like, I don't know, I want to know as much as you do. And she's got her own problems that come to the surface. As someone that, like, she just can't handle what's going on, and she really portrayed this fantastic vulnerability. Amy Madigan, who I've never seen before in a film. You know who this character is when this character pops up, but she was really, really fantastic. Really the standout in my opinion is Josh Brolin. I thought he was so brilliant at playing a grieving father that will do anything to find his son. And he's certainly, it's one of those things, you're watching Justine, the teacher's first perspective, and you're like, this guy's a cunt. But then as you go into his perspective and you see things through his eyes, you just really realize he's somebody. He's a father who just loves his boy more than anything in the world, and he felt like he never said it enough. So he just, that's his one objective in this film, and I thought he's really, really wonderful. Cinematography is pretty great, especially there's a lot of, and I don't know, I feel like this is specifically becoming a very Zach Creggar thing. I know some people are gonna be like, the still shot being a Zach Creggar thing, yeah, great, but no, it really, there's a lot of scenes where the camera just holds on something that is pretty horrific. Maybe horrific's not the word. It holds on something and it just kind of tells you to keep looking. And you might be looking at this thing for maybe 30 seconds, even longer. And like, you think 30 seconds is long, but if you really count like 30 seconds in your head, it's pretty long. Maybe not even 30 seconds, maybe like 12 seconds. But you're just sitting looking at this thing, waiting for something to happen. And this awful, awful dread builds up in you. And then through that, when the thing happens, he doesn't cut. You don't really cut away from it. And I think it's such a really fantastic shot. And he's just like, you can't look away. You really can't look away. And I really loved that specifically. As I said before about Creggar's direction and vision, I really like the idea of essentially selling me a different story. I think that's wonderful. And not leaving me guess what's going to happen next, I think is so great. Interesting thing about the tone is that obviously this is marketed as a pure horror film, and from a lot of the scenes that we see, even the trailer and stuff, you think it, like, it's pretty horrifying, but a lot of times the film dips its toe into more of like a dark comedy, which is really unexpected at a lot of times. And it's but the things that it's expected, it's unexpected, but it's very welcome because it's obviously very intentional. You might be watching something that is pretty fucking frightening, but the character might do something so hilarious in the aftermath that I remember I was laughing and I was thinking, I was like, should I be laughing? And then other people were laughing. I was like, phew, thank God that was a joke. Specifically going into the last act, there's something pretty horrifying happens, but it's so bizarre that it's funny, and it's meant that way. It's certainly meant that way, and I'd be surprised if it wasn't meant that way, especially because I think it was Jordan Peele that said it, that there's such a strong similarity between horror and comedy that it's just the soundtrack that changes it. Because I believe the first scene when the kids are running out of the house, it's playing a George Harrison song, Beware of Darkness, I believe it's called. And like if he wanted to put a very stinger on that, I think it would be a lot more horrifying than it turned out. Also at the ends, from what I believe, I think it's a happy song playing at the end of the film. Maybe not a happy song exactly, but it's not pure horror, I'm gonna fucking vomit my guts out. It's something that actually it just makes you giggle. It's a clash of tones. So obviously it's very intentional, and it worked. A lot of the scenes could be very, very tense, and and then something horrifying could happen. The jump scare, the sound happens, and then the character does something funny. I'm thinking specifically with the junkie character, um, or he might see something that is kind of fucking scary. But to us, it's just so bizarre that you just really can't help but laugh. There's also a funny one with Josh Brolin waking up from a dream, which is right after he woke up from a dream that everyone was cackling up at, which I thought was great. I've seen a lot of people online talking about kind of social commentary in this film, and I don't want to say anything flew over my head or anything, but I'm kind of like, what social commentary? Because I missed it. I've seen a lot of people say that this is an allegory for something that happens in a school. Can't say I'm too informed on something like that. And I've seen a lot of people also say that it's a story about addiction, which in some parts it certainly is. But to say that every character in the film has a certain addiction, I've seen a massive stretch go for one of the characters, and I just don't believe it's that either. And I don't want to be stupid in saying that maybe it's one of those films that people might be looking into a small bit too much with the ending explained, blah blah. What does this mean? Kind of effect. But I guess the thing is that the director, when he's writing, it seems like he doesn't know, and I feel like I heard this in an interview, he doesn't really know what's going to happen next, and it's only maybe when he gets to page 50 he now knows what's the story about, what's going to happen next. So I guess what on the fifth rewrite does he come up with the whole meaning of the story in the very deep themes of what it's about? I don't really know. I didn't really read into it too much either, and that's okay too. Every film doesn't have to have this very rich, deep theme. Sometimes a film can just simply be very fun. I put this actually kind of next to, say, a film like Nope, Jordan Peele's Nope. I remember after that film, I just thought, I remember I was racking my head for what this meant and all this, what was the missus, what does it mean, what does the whole thing mean? And at the end of the day, I just realised it was just kind of a throwback to, like Jaws. And that's fantastic too. And I've watched the film since then, and I've just seen, oh yes, this is just a fun horror film. Now, obviously, some people are going to be there saying that this means that means that. I don't really care either. I think it's a really fun horror film at the end of the day, and I think that's all it is, surface level. And I think this is actually pretty similar. It's a pretty fun horror film without much. There obviously, I don't really know why I'm diving into this, but here we go. Every single film doesn't have to have this very rich, deep theme, and I just don't think this film has that. I think that it's very much, at the end of the day, a fun horror film. I remember when I first saw the ending, there was a knee-jerk reaction. I wouldn't say it was a bad reaction, but it was a bit unexpected. But I just kind of realized that, not right now in this seat, but what I realized is that it actually basically opened more questions than the answers that you got in the film. And even I've seen today that apparently there was an option on the table for Zach Creggar to direct a prequel, which I would think would be a really silly idea. The questions in the film are why you sat there watching. I think that all the questions that are there by the end of the film are going to be the reasons why this film could be talked about in 10 years time, 20 years time, hopefully further than that. I in the end, I really liked the ending, and I liked that it didn't answer all the questions. In the end, I really, really quite liked this film, and the rating of this film is, can we pretend that airplanes are in the night sky like shooting stars?